the County Observer and Monmouthshire Central Advertiser, Abergavenny and Raglan Herald, Usk and Pontypool Messenger, and Chepstow Argus introduce us to the life and exploits of the renowned King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table.
Chapter 12. But here we stand, determined champions in opposing lists, each in his country's cause, the others for. Come, for I long to try the seasoned blade upon true metal. Sir Ulfius and Sir Brastius encounter German knights and defeat them. They afterwards fall in with Sir Variance and Sir Lionel, partisans of King Claudas, their courtiers greeting. The English knights interview with King Ban and King Bors, their promise of assistance to Arthur. Sir Ulfius and Sir Brastius recross the sea to Britain, festivals at Calais on Usk. The three knights and their followers dismounted, and tethering their horses under a clump of spreading trees, seated themselves upon the velvety award of a meadow by the waterside. Their attendants unpacked the provisions, and spread a repast for their masters, who regaled themselves with the zest of a keen appetite after their long ride. The meal concluded, they refilled their cups with wine, and, throwing themselves down upon the grass, listened with indolent enjoyment to the carol of the larks, revelling far up in the sunny air, and the monotonous note of the cuckoo from the forest dells. But they were not permitted long to remain undisturbed, for scarcely had a half hour elapsed, when two of their men, who had been picketed in the wood to guard against the danger of any sudden surprise, came galloping up in hot haste. "To horse, my lords," they shouted. "A company of knights and men-at-arms are approaching, but whether friends or foes, we know not." In an instant, Sir Ulfius and Sir Brastius, with young Sir Lionel, sprang to their arms. "Whoever they be," said Sir Ulfius, "we will ride boldly forward and meet them." They remounted their horses, loosened their swords in their scabbards, and, grasping their lances, rode on at a hand gallop. They shortly encountered a noble retinue of knights and troopers in complete steel and finely mounted. Their leader was a fierce-looking chieftain riding a powerful black charger. As he advanced, he held up his gauntleted hand and shouted, "Stand ho, and declare yourselves who you are and whence you come." "Sir Knight, we are strangers in this land, having crossed the seas on an envoy from King Arthur, whose liegemen we be," answered Sir Ulfius, with stately courtesy. "And your errand one of peace or of war?" asked the chief. "Our mission is one of peace and amity," replied Sir Ulfius. "We bring letters of greeting and presents to the two kings, King Ban of Benwick and King Bors of Gaul, with whom our sovereign liege, King Arthur, desires to form a friendly alliance. We therefore pray you in all courtesy to suffer us to proceed." "It may not be, Sir Knight," returned the chief. "We are the liege men of King Claudas of Germany, with whom the kings you name are at war, and those who avow themselves the friends of these two kings are, by consequence, the enemies of our royal master. Sirs, ye are my prisoners, and must yield up your arms." "By St. George, we shall do no such thing," replied Sir Ulfius stoutly. "We are ready to break a lance with you in this cause." "Be it so," returned the hostile knight. "Take your ground, and do your best and worst." The Englishman answered with a ringing cheer, and riding back to a distance sufficiently great to give the proper impetus to the charge, couched their spears and prepared for the onset. Sir Ulfius selected the commander of the German knights for his individual antagonist, while Sir Brastius and Sir Lionel picked out two others whose dress and bearing beckoned them as being second in rank to the leader. Then the trumpeters on either side blew a loud blast as a signal for the assault, and the two opposing lines started at full gallop and dashed furiously against each other. The lance point of Sir Ulfius struck fair against the shield of his adversary, while that of the German knight swerved aside, and coming in contact with the convex part of the other's breastplate, shivered to pieces. The German knight was borne from the saddle and rolled heavily on the ground, where he lay like a log. Sir Brastius and Sir Lionel were both equally successful, for, like Sir Ulfius, they each unhorsed his man. The rest of the English party were not quite so fortunate, their success being only partial, 3 or 4 of them being borne down to 5 or 6 of the Germans. Wheeling round their horses and measuring their distance, the 3 principal knights of the English party again dashed on to the charge, and met with the most signal success, but only young Sir Lionel brought off his lance undamaged, the weapon of his 2 companions being shattered and rendered useless. Then followed a furious hand-to-hand conflict with swords and battle axes. Blows ran upon the stubborn armour, swords clashed and shields clanged against each other, while either side made the air ring with shouts and counter-shouts of mutual defiance. Helmets were cleft, breastplates pierced, and soon the ground was heaped with the mangled bodies of dead and dying. The English had a hard fight of it, for the Germans outnumbered them 2 to 1, and contended with the utmost bravery, but were at length repulsed and fled the field. The loss on the English part was very serious, for more than a third of their number was slain, while of the remaining scarce one escaped unwounded. The 3 knights had each received hurts, and Sir Brastius had 2 horses killed under him before the enemy gave way. Sir Lionel, with youthful impetuosity, would have pursued the flying foe, but Sir Brastius objected. "Enough has been done, Sir Lionel," he said. "We are spent with toil, and few in numbers, and until we have performed the king's errand, there is neither wisdom nor honour in vainly risking life or liberty. Sir Ulfius consented to forego further fighting, and Sir Lionel, out of respect for his elders, at once gave up the point. The adventure was scarcely over when the sound of trumpets greeted their ears, and a plump of spears were seen glistening down the valley. "By my haldame, methinks the tide of fortune has set against us," said Sir Ulfius. "Whom have we here? We are scarce breathed from one passage of arms when we are called upon to engage in another battle, and that with a force plainly too strong for us." "Better fortune, Sir Ulfius," returned Sir Brastius. "See, they march under the golden lilies of France, and I make no doubt are liegemen of the two kings whom we are seeking." The advance guard had now approached, and at its head rode two handsome knights in resplendent armour. These were Sir Variance and Sir Lionel, and, as conjectured by the English envoys, proved to be partisans of King Ban of Benwick. They halted and courteously saluted the English chivalry, who, when they had told how they had been sent by King Arthur, and upon what business, were heartily welcomed by the Franks. They were invited to accompany their acquaintances to the court of Benwick, whither they were marching. Sir Ulfius and the other knights at once consented to the arrangement. The wounded having been cared for, Sir Brastius was provided with another horse, and then the cavalcade started on the march, with drums beating and banners flying. "You come at a most happy time, my lords," said Variance, as they rode along together through the rich and smiling land. "King Claudas hath just fought a long and stubborn battle with King Ban." "And to whom has the victory fallen?" asked Ulfius. "It was claimed by both sides, and truth to tell, the advantage was but small for us or the enemy. King Claudas, however, has for the moment raised the siege of Benwick, and is retreating towards his own frontier, where he will be joined by large reinforcements. The kings, I know, will send to your king what powers they can spare, and when he has crushed his rebel barons, he will not fail to return our service. With the brave chivalry of England at our side, we shall have no fear for the tyrant Claudas." And so they rode merrily on to the large and opulent city of Benwick. Here they found the two kings, Ban and Bors, and when they told the kings that they were messengers from King Arthur of England, the kings took the two knights, Sir Ulfius and Sir Brastius, in their arms, and made great joy each of the other. And forthwith they spake to the knights, and welcomed them most cordially, and said they were more welcome unto them than any knights living. And therewith they kissed the letters, and delivered them into the hands of King Ban. And when King Ban and King Bors understood the letter, then were they better welcome than before, and said they would fulfill the desire of King Arthur's writing. And Ulfius and Brastius tarried there as long as they would, and had as good cheer as might be made them in those long marches, and great gifts as much as they might bear away, and had their answer by mouth and by writing. that those two kings would come to King Arthur in all the haste that they might. So the English knights rode on afore, and crossed the sea, and came to their lord, and told him how they had sped, whereof King Arthur was passing glad. At what time think ye the knights will be here? Asked Arthur. Sir, said they, afore All Hallow Mass. Then the king prepared for a great feast and a grand joust, as peace prevailed for a time, for the rebel barons were preparing to carry on the war on a large scale, and with redoubled vigour, while the king was obliged to await the arrival of the kings from France before he recommenced hostilities. During the interval, King Arthur and his knights passed their time right merrily. For days and weeks there was a continual succession of tourney and banquet at Calais on Usk, and when the chivalry were not engaged in perfecting their warlike exercises in the tilt yard, or paying court to the fair ladies, and listening to the songs of the bards in the great hall of the king's castle, they rode to the chase with hawk and hound.